Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sagar, your host for today's webinar. It gives me immense pleasure welcoming you all to the live webinar on the theme of Enabling Industry 4.0, Securing Cyber Physical Assets. This webinar is hosted by Cyber Media Research in association with IBM. For the duration of presentation, all participant lines will remain in listen-only mode. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. Your feedback is very important to us. Please submit your feedback at the end of this webinar. And now, I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Anil Chopra, VP, Research and Consulting, Cyber Media Research, who will share his insights on security threat landscape in the Industry 4.0. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sagar, and very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for joining us in on this webinar on Enabling Industry 4.0 and Securing Cyber Physical Assets. Now, cyber physical systems, they have become a critical part of Industry 4.0 because, they're the mechanisms that are controlled or monitored by computer-based algorithms. So you could have robotic systems, autonomous vehicles, process control systems, smart grids, etc. These are some examples which would be, comprising of cyber physical systems. And, they will be monitoring the physical processes inside a factory. And there'll be usage of IoT to communicate, and they'll use that to communicate, they'll cooperate with each other, and also communicate with humans. Now, clearly that since there is communication happening between machines automatically and autonomously, and there is communication with humans, so it clearly indicates the importance of securing such systems from malicious attacks. Moreover, many manufacturers would have also, have a lot of such old equipment as well, which is automation equipment inside their factories that doesn't have probably network connectivity or even IoT sensors. And such systems also become more vulnerable as you move towards Industry 4.0. So before I get into why they become more vulnerable and just how serious the threats could even be, with some of the more advanced cyber physical systems, so I just want to talk about some of the, start off by actually looking at an overview of what are some of the benefits that Industry 4.0 really, promises, which is actually the rosy side of the picture. So obviously, you would have heard it from many people, and you probably might have attended some of our past webinars on, what are some of the benefits of having an Industry 4.0, path and moving towards it. It allows greater productivity. It allows you to enhance your product quality, allows for greater product customization to the unit of one, in fact, some cases where customers become more demanding because you can actually have a more agile and efficient and a flexible business. And as a result, you're able to innovate faster. You can get more because you can get more visibility because as you get more of, industrial IoT in place, you can actually pull out data from the various sensors and actually, gain greater insights into what's happening. And that allows you to innovate much faster. And of course, over a period of time, as the product quality improves and, your costs there also come down because of the improved quality and lesser challenges related to fixing those. And of course, as you are able to cater to demands of customers for greater customization, that can lead to higher revenues and at the same time lower cost. And in fact, there are global studies that indicate companies who have already moved to Industry 4.0 have reaped significant benefits. They have actually improved their bottom line, they've improved their top line considerably thanks to Industry 4.0. Obviously, it enhances customer satisfaction because you're able to cater to their demands faster. So all of this is actually the rosy side of Industry 4.0, but like, everything else, there is a dark side to it as well, which is something that I will really actually talk about. As you, get greater connectivity within a factory, as well as outside as you connect to the customers or the suppliers, it just basically expands the threat landscape, the overall threat landscape. So, there is greater footprint because due to the, there are multiple weak links that actually come in. So whether, it's your industrial control system or it's cloud-based monitoring, or even a connected supply chain, the attackers actually get many more points of entry to try and break into. In fact, that's the point that, there are now hackers who are actually groups who are building purpose-built malware, that tracks specific industrial automation and control systems. And, they're actually able to target that, and they just have to do is figure out how to plant one inside a system, and, after that it can spread and wreak havoc. So, so that's actually the dark side, that, once somebody gets in because of so many weak links, all they have to do is break one and actually get in and infect a system, and that can actually cause a lot of damage. The other is that there's increasing digitization of paperwork in every organization, right? In case of manufacturing, a lot of trade secrets like design blueprints or secret recipes and formulas, it becomes extremely important to take measures to secure them, because as you tend more towards digitization, the footprint to be able to hack them and steal the information, becomes much, much higher. Coca-Cola, for instance, their formula is a closely guarded secret. And so would probably be the design footprint, or the design blueprint of whatever product a manufacturing company is actually creating. So with such a more connected environment that Industry 4.0 offers, it's important to have the right strategy in place to guard your trade secrets from theft or damage. Another dark side to this could be a lot of RFID tags are being utilized, whether it's in a supply chain on your logistics aspect, or your raw materials or product inventory. A DDoS attack or a denial of service attack on RFID frequencies could actually disrupt the supply chain. So that's another link that hackers could possibly tap. And then, of course, if you are connecting factories over the cloud, you are actually doing remote monitoring of various systems. One access, into that connection, can actually, cause a lot of damage, because if you're not putting in appropriate security measures. So, like I said, one weak link can actually wreak havoc. So that is one key takeaway here, because there are multiple channels that open up for the attack surface actually increases. All that's needed is to attack and penetrate the weakest link and cause damage. So, it's not just the newer systems, it's the older outdated systems as well, where the communications protocols were built many, many, many years ago, and they were not really designed with security in mind, actually can get penetrated, and, and malware can actually cause a lot of damage to that. And of course, the newer systems which are already connected, they're pre-configured for net connectivity. There again, malware can be implanted, and it could be as bad as, changing or destroying the logic inside PLCs, or even, encrypting some of the logic and then demanding ransomware for it. USB ports have been known to be a great point of entry for industrial attacks. And the reason is that, through a USB port, you don't have to worry about the size of the malware. Any size, it could be of any size that could actually get in through a USB port. And the bigger, the larger the size, the more complex it can be, and, it can easily be hidden because of that. Larger size means that the coders get more leeway to be able to create the code in such a way that it can be hidden inside, systems. And as a result, more complex malware can be created, and with lots and lots of features to steal data, at the discretion of the hacker. Now, of course, it sounds very theoretical that there is so much of things that are possible, but finally, I think it's important to actually look at whether such a thing can actually happen and whether it has actually happened, and that's exactly what my next slide is actually be. Here are a few attacks by some malware programs that have actually gained a lot of publicity because of the nature of the attack and the damage that they've actually done. I think, Stuxnet is a fairly well-known name in the malware, which actually damaged Iran's nuclear program by targeting PLCs. So that was a fairly complicated operation, a large size malware that, I think got in through USB, and then it remained hidden for so many months, and it finally, caused a lot of damage to their nuclear program. Similar to Stuxnet is another malware program called Duqu, which just basically collects information and sends it back to the hacker to plan future attacks. Okay, that's again a very dangerous thing for a malware program to do. And a similar data mining virus called Flame also came up, which could actually mine a lot of data from Iran's uranium enrichment facility, and that again caused a lot of damage because it could actually collect a lot of data and understand how the thing operates, and it gives them, the hackers, better planning. Another one is the Industroyer. And I think you might have heard of this in the news, how Ukraine's power grid actually was attacked and it actually cut off power for an hour. Now, that's a fairly dangerous thing to do because that's government property and it's providing power to, entire city. And if portion of that gets, blocked, then that means no power for a long period of time. And in a place, for example, if it's a very cold region, then, without electricity, heaters won't work, and, pipelines could burst because the water will freeze. And that can have a dominoes effect that can cause so much other damage. So essentially, a lot more can be done, and this was one malware that actually came into limelight that actually created it. Okay, caused so much damage. Clear Energy ransomware is another one, which actually encrypted process automation logic, and it was designed for a large range of PLC models and critical infrastructure. So it was not just limited to one or two models, but many, many models of many, many well-known companies. It could actually do that, and after encrypting the logic, it would charge ransomware. And unless and until you paid up, it would destroy the entire logic of the ransomware, and that's a fairly dangerous situation to be in. And even more dangerous, and this, I'm sure that you would be reminded of WannaCry ransomware that came in recently, which actually infected many machines. Similarly, this Clear Energy did the same thing, but it was actually meant more for PLCs and critical infrastructure rather than just simple PCs. KillDisk is even more dangerous. It doesn't, it basically encrypts or even destroys the files. And it demands ransomware, but it has already destroyed the file. So anybody who gets infected, and might end up paying the ransomware and then not being able to get the decryption key in return to be able to recover all the lost data. It simply destroys it. So that is the actual extent of the damage that can be caused, and here are some real-life examples. These are the ones that actually came into limelight, but I'm sure that there will be many others who would, which would not have come to limelight but would have caused equal amount of damage nevertheless. So actually, as you could imagine, that the seriousness and how dangerous malware attacks are actually becoming, thanks to all the interconnectivity that Industry 4.0 has to offer between customers, between the supply chain, and in fact the machinery inside plants. And it can therefore no longer be an afterthought. Security can no longer be an afterthought that's left for the IT team to handle. It has to be integrated into your overall Industry 4.0 strategy right from day one. Right? So I think that was the point that I was trying to make, that how of the critical nature of security and the importance of security in an Industry 4.0 setup. And that actually brings me to the end of my presentation. And in the next presentation, which will be more on how can you gain more visibility into your Industry 4.0 operations and performance. And that would actually be delivered by Harjinder Thakkar, who's the Chief Technical Architect for Information Security at IBM India. But before I hand it over to him, I'd like to run a quick poll, and I'd really appreciate if you could respond to it. Thank you very much for listening in, and I hand it now over to the admin to run the poll. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Participants, the poll is open for the next 1 minute. You can please submit your responses at the earliest. Thank you. So I'm furnishing the results now.
Thank you, Sagar. And with that, I'd now like to hand it over to Harjinder to take over the next session. Maybe he could share insights from the poll results. Over to you, Harjinder.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for attending this session today and taking time out from your schedule. I'm going to run a short presentation. The intention of this presentation is to suggest what is it that we are seeing in the manufacturing sector, and then certain suggestions that you could follow, given that they are in line with your thought process as well. Most of the presentation covers the different areas of the poll. Wherever you believe you have an area of interest, if you could send out your queries, we'll take it up in the last 15 minutes of this particular session. Moving on, I think this has been my favorite slide for a very long time. I think in the area of security, you simply cannot start believing that since you are fair with the world and you are not attacking anybody, nobody is going to attack you. That is not the manner in which the world behaves. So this is one of my favorite slides to bring out this particular aspect. The fact that you are only running a business in an honest and efficient manner does not mean that somebody will not attack you. That's not a sufficient reason for somebody to not attack you. And you need to be prepared for these attacks and to be able to respond to these attacks as well. Going on, I think this is a favorite line of mine that I've come across recently, adapted to business, I've adapted it to security. It goes on that every day in Africa, a gazelle wakes up knowing that it has to run faster than the fastest lion to survive. And however, every day in Africa, a lion wakes up knowing that it has to be faster than the slowest gazelle in order to survive. The lion does not necessarily need to catch the fastest gazelle. Right? One of my favorite lines, absolutely applicable to the area in which we are working. Right? You have to be faster than the fastest lion. The lion, however, is trying to find the easiest way to fulfill his stomach. The lion is not necessarily trying to find complicated ways to fulfill his stomach. And then that is what we all need to ensure via our security posture. What has happened in the world and why are we at this particular stage? Another one of my favorite slides, I think we should have put it up possibly as one more poll question. This is very interesting for me. As I was growing up and playing across gardens and things of that kind, I never had a challenge picking up a garden hose and drinking water from that. It is something that I have done in my childhood. And for people of my age or that are slightly younger than me, I'm yet to come across a person that has not done this. However, I will not allow my children to do this as of today. Wherever we go out, there is sufficient amount of bottled water in all our sessions. If you go to a corporate event, there's bottled water. You would typically pick up a bottled water that is sealed as well. What really happened to the world while we grew up? And why is it that whatever we did is something that we may not allow our children to do? Right? Just a correlation. Possibly there's a virus in that water as of today that we are worried about. We grew up in a very simple world. We build our systems, especially in the area of manufacturing, in a simpler world where people were not trying to attack them for the purpose of monetization. Somebody was trying to only prove a point that I can do this to you. As we have grown up, something has gone terribly wrong across the world in the ways in which it wants to earn money. And security or a bloodless war is the easiest way to earn money. Nobody would want to try and bring a gun over and try and attack you. It is far easier, as Anil covered in his presentation, to send across some viruses and bring down your entire businesses, be it the actual infrastructure-related part of it or the business and IT-related part of it. Putting in viruses is far more simpler, easier, cheaper, very few risks that are involved. Right? Now let's look at some actual statistics on the ground. This is from our Expose team, the threat intelligence team. What is it that they have seen? So over the last 3 years, in 2004, we saw 1 billion records that are broken through. It's increased 4 times as you come down to 2016. You would find that the circles are becoming bigger and they are getting more closer to each other. So this is like a path that is growing in size. The number of attacks are growing every day. Mind you, this is not happening because we reduced our security investment. while we increased our security investment, while we invested more in security over this particular period, the attacks continue to grow. They have not yet gone down. In every other area of life, you would typically believe that if you spend more money, you would get something better. If you go on a holiday and spend more money, you will possibly go to a better place. In business, if you spend more money, you will get higher quality product. However, in the area of security, the slide does represent the fact that even as we keep increasing our investments, we have not necessarily got absolute benefit of that. Some more numbers for you to take on this particular slide. We find that it takes about 207 days for us in order to detect a breach, and the cost of the breach is going up. Right? Moving on, that's the average time, 201 days, 7 million as the average cost of a breach. Of course, in the US, the costs in India are lower than this, but it keeps growing up as time goes by. But 201 days is what is available to these viruses and malware to cause damage into your system if you have a security posture that is not secure. What did we see across the manufacturing sector as the last year went by? Right. This is data for 2016 across the entire 2016. What we did see is that, now let me just put the nomenclature. Events are typically what is happening on your system and what gets logged. That is the definition of an event. You would put in certain tools to interpret these events, and the tool will give you an output. That is an attack. The tool is suggesting that possibly you are under attack. After that, there is a certain amount of manual effort in validating, in triaging and determining whether it's actually something that you should be bothered about. When that manual effort has been put in, it becomes an incident because you have now confirmed via the analysis of the expert that what the tool is suggesting is right. The remaining could be false positives. So if you look at manufacturing as an industry, what you would see that is that the number of events are higher than the remaining industries. So which means that there is more amount of logs that are getting generated for activities that are happening within the environment. The number of attacks are lesser, which means that when the tool analyzes them, it does find that there are lesser attacks that are happening across the manufacturing sector. A part of it would be the reason why, because of the fact that it is more closely bound. You may not necessarily always have interactions with the internet. You may have certain other mechanisms to prevent access. So the number of attacks are definitely lesser. However, the number of incidents are higher, which means that the attackers are targeting in a better manner. They are, while the number of attacks are lesser, the incidents are higher, which means that the target or how to attack is getting more and more intelligent. I am not trying to do a brute force and try and attack you in every possible manner. I understand the environment. I understand what I need to do in order to breach that particular environment. So that is the cause of worry. With a lower number of attacks, the number of incidents are higher. Of course, there are very few regulatory bindings on manufacturing organizations in terms of IT security, and it is always possible that the actual number of incidents that get reported could always be lower than what is actually happening on the ground. So that's a caveat to this. Moving on this particular aspect, what has been the source of the attack? So we saw the number of attacks that they were getting more targeted. The source of the attack. So 91% of the attacks as of today are being committed by outsiders versus 9% that are being committed by insiders. Out of the 9 also, we've got a breakup. The malicious insiders are typically at 4%. The inadvertent actors, which means that you have done something by mistake, is at 5%. So when we look at this and when we tried and analyzed this, I think there are more outsider attacks, there are less insider attacks, and also the fact that the outsider attack at manufacturing is much higher than what a typical industry would see. Most other industries would see the insider attacks at a larger percentage than 9 and the outsider attacks at a lower percentage than 91. So there's something that is happening right. You are also getting protected by the fact that there is something legacy not yet connected to the internet, but as you keep opening it up, as you keep connecting it to the internet, as the attacks continue to get monetized in a better manner, these numbers should change. But something as of today that is working in your favor in terms of insiders having a low percentage of attack. My next slide is about what are the typical attack scenarios for manufacturing. One, crown jewels. Crown jewels is, for example, your designs. So whatever you are building, you have a design against that. So as Anil covered as a part of the previous presentation, let's say the formula for Coke, that is your crown jewel. For Coke, that is a crown jewel. That is their USP, that is why it sells across the world. If anybody else gets their hands on that particular formula, they can create a drink that is equivalent of that. So the crown jewels, the designs that you would have for your different products, that is what is typically under attack because that can be monetized very easily. You can sell that and earn money against that. The second is the operational information. How is it that you are doing particular activities? Right? The internal operational information of an organization. This is the second kind of the asset that is getting attacked as a part of your environment. The third one is ransomware and digital, which is true for everybody. So we covered certain ransomware attacks. That is true across all different kinds of industries. Everybody is going through ransomware attacks. Over there, the intention is to come, to latch on, to encrypt, and then ask you for money for keys. That is an attack that is seen across the industries. The top two are specifically for manufacturing. The last one is generic for everybody. Okay. Now, this is what we believe is happening over here. It would be interesting to, during the question and answer session or during that particular session, it would be very interesting to get certain views from everybody in terms of what is it that they believe they are doing and how do they believe that this can get better. We also looked at the poll, and that is where the data and the network is roughly about the same number of responses, which is of importance. The crown jewels and operational information would follow under the data part of it. The network is how to reach them. So this matches with respect to what you are suggesting as the areas of your importance and what is being under attack. Let's look at what are the top attacks that are being seen, right? So you would find that this is significantly skewed. Typically, when you look at the first few line items, the percentages are typically closer. You will find that this is significantly skewed. 74% to 7% is 10.4 to 1 or approximately 10.5 to 1. It is significantly skewed. And you will also find that the first one, the inject unexpected items, which means that you have, let's say, an application. I'm trying to put in certain information that allows me to steal data from that particular application. In IT attacks, that could be manipulating the database connections using, if you're using SQL, manipulating it using SQL injection attacks and putting in certain data which allows me, let's say, to bypass the entire authentication mechanism or to exfiltrate data from that. You would find that the average industry is 42% versus a 74% at manufacturing. What this typically would mean is that it is still very easy to attack manufacturing IT per se or manufacturing environment per se, because these are simpler attacks to carry on. As you go down, some of these attacks get extremely complicated. You need a higher level of skill to be able to, for example, at the lower you see engage in deceptive interaction, to try and fool somebody via deceptive interaction. It gets slightly more difficult as you go down. And the inject unexpected items is possibly among the oldest kinds of attacks, an attack that does not take a large amount of effort for the attacker to carry out. And we are still seeing a very high number over there, 74%. Our conclusion from this has been the fact that a lot of these systems do not get patched. If you have web-facing applications or even internet applications, a lot of them do not go through the necessary patching and they are vulnerable. The attackers find it very easy to come in via this particular mechanism, and as long as they find it very easily to come in via this mechanism, they are not necessarily trying to use any kind of complicated attacks. As we spend effort to reduce these attacks, you would see that the number of percentages on the other attacks get higher. More effort would be spent in order to attack manufacturing customers. Moving on to the next one, what are typical purchase patterns that we are seeing across different customers? So this is cross-industry, not necessarily manufacturing. The first one is a very responsive mechanism where it's totally on the basis of attack. An attack happened, we went ahead and we purchased a solution. The attack could be, okay, I found somebody that could get into my network. I went and purchased a firewall. I needed to determine whether that person was genuine, not genuine. I went and purchased an IPS. I saw some data going out. I went ahead and purchased, let's say, a data loss prevention solution that is looking at what is the data flowing outside and is either monitoring or blocking it. So this is very reactive in nature, looks at what is happening, go ahead and purchase a solution. You get attacked in a different manner, look at what is happening, go ahead and purchase a different solution. A never-ending process because the solutions are largely not talking to each other. The second kind of purchase patterns that we have seen, which I typically end up calling as the Indian Premier League, of course, so other leagues would also follow something similar. You are looking at different kinds of things that are necessary to make you successful. So this is how the IPL teams are built up and largely how the auction happens. So I go ahead, I build certain kinds of layers, and against them, I go ahead and purchase solutions. So typically, I would have a different level of maturity against all of them. I will go ahead and I'll purchase solutions in these different areas. Because of the manner that it is layered in a particular mechanism and you are looking at the maturity of a particular layer, it is better than at least the attack-based scenarios. So you understand that as of now, I believe that data is most critical to me. Let me look at what is it that I can purchase to strengthen my data security. Of course, it depends on the lower layers as well. If you do not put in enough investments on the lower layers, it would typically mean that your data is not going to remain secure. You've got certain mechanism, but then there is a way out. You've put a lock on the door, the windows are still open. It's something that you would not want to do, right? Most organizations that you would see have worked on the network and host part. So you would find firewalls and IPS in place, some amount of antivirus in place, irrespective of how good they are with respect to recent attacks. So they've worked on that particular space. So the maturity on the lower layers is definitely higher. It gets lower and lower as you move up the ladder. The third kind of purchase pattern, much more difficult to follow, but absolutely useful, is to look at your business, look at your compliance requirements, and look at your threats, and try and determine, I have mapped against all three, and I am making a purchase decision. So I think even when you follow the second style, if it gets mapped in this manner, then you understand what is it that you are getting out of this particular solution, right? So three different purchase patterns that we have seen across all our customers. Key elements of a security strategy. So this is generic. I think I did not want to split manufacturing sector into further subsectors and try and determine what should be a key element of a security strategy. But according to me, so I'm just going to put the first three. Align the security strategy to your business. This is what my business needs. If this happens, my business will grow. If the following happens, then I see my business dropping. What are security threats as per these particular area? This is where the data security, as some of you have pointed out, will lie. How do I build a risk assessment scenario? As we build products on our assembly lines, over a period of time, we've put in a lot of risk mitigation steps so that the final output is absolutely great. Some of our best quality processes and procedures have come out of manufacturing sector. Try and take it back to the IT segment as well. An example that I would want to give you from a totally different sector, something that is a favorite of mine. If you open your bank account, the balance in that is always correct. You cannot have a scenario where the balance of that is incorrect. That is how banking takes the account balance seriously. With respect to IT, are we that confident that we are secure? Do we have that particular level of visibility around that? Data security, as you pointed out, is absolutely necessary. The biggest challenges with data is that if you have, let's say, a network, it goes down for some amount of time. There is loss, which is calculated by the time at which it went down. Let's say it's daytime, peak hours, a significant amount of loss. Nighttime, let's say non-peak hours, under specific scenarios, there is a particular loss. Your design for your next product going out is out. There is no recovery from that. That once gone out is out. There's no way that you can now stop the replication and distribution of that. In network security, if it goes down, you'll bring it back up in some hours. Data, the design out is out forever. Right? So these are the top 3 key elements of a security strategy. The next thing that I want to bring out is the assess and standardize. Helps you, anything that you would standardize. For example, the assembly lines helps you with repeatable things. The same thing should get applied to security. Assess where you are, standardize it so that everybody has the same idea of where they are moving to and are contributing to that. The integrate architecture, do not want to be in a responsive scenario as we saw in the attack-based scenario, that you keep purchasing something which do not talk to each other. Absolutely inefficient mechanism of doing things. Somebody trying to look at 10 different screens and try and determine what is happening is an absolutely bad way of trying to deal with a security attack. The learning, human beings remain the weakest link. Helping them, being a part of the security posture is the best strength that you can have. They have to be willing to learn and to collaborate and to strengthen the organization. For example, USBs. Please do not plug USBs that you pick up from any random fair, seminar into your corporate environment. The easiest way to get a malware into an organization comes out of learning. Right? And then there are other aspects over here in this particular layer. The next layer is about the general philosophy. Harden everything. By harden, I mean, for example, if there are vulnerabilities in the environment, harden it. Standardize it from the upper layer and harden everything so that it does not get easily breached. Automate as far as possible. For example, distribution of antivirus software, their patching has to be automated. Most organizations till date struggle with getting antivirus onto the endpoint. It's a major challenge with most organizations. Antivirus is among the oldest security solution in the world that you will find, but still the ability to get it up and running with the latest signatures on every endpoint is a major challenge. Simplify usage. It should be very easy to use, very easy to understand. A user that sees an incident should have a very easy mechanism to raise an alert. If they do not understand that, they will never raise an alert. By the time we realize that this has gone wrong, it will be very late. Okay? So these are my key elements of a security strategy. As I said, do not want to break it down into sub-sectors and say this is how exactly it applies to a possible sector. The next area of security and how are we doing? The first area of security has been the perimeter controls, where we deployed solutions at the perimeter. We realized that this is a mechanism to go ahead and work, ensure that the perimeter is secure, just as moats and around castle. Then came in the ability to integrate everything and orchestrate that. The last area is about cognitive. So you will hear the word cognitive a lot about systems learning that they are under attack and building mechanisms to respond to those attacks. Now, what is it that you can practically do? From an IBM perspective, 2 different things that I'm suggesting. We'll just leave it on the table. No attempts to hard sell anything over here. One is build visibility across the entire enterprise. See what is happening across the entire enterprise. Take all the logs and data that is flowing to a common place. Build rules around it in terms of how those attacks are actually happening or not happening. Prioritize them so that you are not looking for that needle in the haystack. If you look at the left part of the picture, so many different things that you would have to do as of today. If you look at the right part of the picture or at the center of the picture, there's a prioritized incident. The tools will work, correlate all of this, and give you a sensible output. So this is largely a tool-based approach for building visibility. The next one is more of a tabletop exercise, something that is done over pen and paper, using a seminar, using a workshop, trying and dividing your entire security posture into these 10 essential practices, risk aware, the intelligence operations, data, network, identity. Meeting people that are responsible for this, understanding what is it that they are doing today, comparing it against what they should actually be doing, building a gap assessment, building a roadmap for them, and also estimating the amount of time, giving them a maturity number, that this is what your maturity number as of today is. Also helping them understand what is the industry's maturity level, so that they understand what is their gap from the competition. So this one is completely a tabletop exercise done as a workshop or as a seminar, and done over, you can do it in different flavors. You need not choose all 10. You can choose 2 out of these and say, let's look at my data security and network security as per the poll, for example. Only assess this and tell me how good I am versus the rest of the world. What is my maturity and what is it that I need to do to get better? So these 2 different approaches, one on the previous slide, which was the tool-based, one as a tabletop exercise. Right? Some of our product portfolios, I'll leave you all with this as a part of the deck at any point of time that you all would want to see this. More than happy to get on a call and explain some of this. Right? Some of our services portfolio in terms of what are the services that we provide. I'm not really sure whether this is visible. I think you'll have to look at this in the final deck. I think it's a large number of services that we offer across the entire industrial space. Right? This is what I wanted to cover today. We'll open it up for questions which are more specific to what is it that you're facing. Purposely tried that we do not get into any kind of a large number of products related discussion over here. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, should you wish to ask any questions, you may use the chat facility on the right-hand side of your screen. To ask any audio questions, you may please press 0 and then 1 on your telephone and wait for your line to be unmuted.
So Harjinder, while the questions come in, I just wanted to understand one thing, that source of attack slide where you said that 9% of the attacks are insider attacks. So are those India figures or global figures?
Right, so so X-Force is our intelligence body that builds it at global figures. Right, so let me just go back to that particular slide. Right, so this is what we are seeing as our managed security services offering, which is offered across the globe and also in India. Right, so it's published at a global level, so not published at a country level, but then these are roughly the kinds of numbers that we are seeing.
Now, there is a question or a comment by Shiv Gupta which says that what measures should be taken to avoid industry-wise, segment-wise attacks? Could you take some practical examples to simplify it?
Yeah. So if you look at the industry in particular, so as we said, what is it that is being under attack, right? What is it that is being under attack? So that is where we came here. So we said that across the industry, we find that majority of the attacks are around intellectual property. That is an absolute given as far as manufacturing industry is concerned. The intellectual property has the highest monetization value. If you look at certain industries, you're trying to hack them because you want to get customer data. If I want to try and hack a bank, I either want to transfer money out of that bank, or I want the data of the consumer so that I can create an account in that name and do fund transfer or money laundering. Right? So that is typically what is happening in that particular space. If you look at the manufacturing, the intellectual property right is your major attack or major asset that is being under attack, and the operational information. So as most of the participants suggested, data security is absolutely important. Ransomware affects everybody. So look at this, look at how is the data flowing outside your organization. Is it going out via web and email channels, via USB? Monitor that and try and determine, okay, these are solutions and they bring about these aspects. Certain solutions in this area, for example, a data loss prevention. Anything that is going outside the organization boundary, sometimes we send it to our own email addresses so that we can go home and work. Right? There's no bad intention, but then once it is on a public email, it can be accessed once that gets hacked. So look at how data is flowing outside your organization and put control. So data loss prevention across all of this, it ensures that it is not going out via these channels. Second one, a digital rights management solution, more applicable for the industry. If I create a document, I am also specifying who are the recipients that should be able to open this document and for how long. I want somebody to look at this document only for a week. I set a timeline that after this week, this document is not open. Let's say I am sending it to an authorized user. So let's say, Anil, I'm sending this document to you, and you are the recipient of this document. A DRM or a digital rights management will not allow you to send, it will allow you to send a document to somebody if your DLP allows, but it will not allow that person to open that document. So it is allowing unauthorized proliferation of documents as well. So these are two typical solutions. There are other solutions like encryption that you would carry out for your laptop so that if a laptop is stolen, then there is no data that can be taken out. Ransomware is a given across the industry. You will need to look at how does virus come in. You will need certain APT solutions, AV solutions. You will need to build, more importantly than that, you will need to build a data backup strategy. Once it is encrypted, till you do not get the decryption key, there is no way to get that data out unless you have a backup of that data. So some of this is going to be hygiene, for example, data backup strategies for the organization. Some of them are going to be tools like a data loss prevention or a digital rights management solution. A lot of this is also going to be user education, letting people know that these are the kind of attacks that are happening. If you do not follow these rules, then this is what will possibly happen. Assuming something of this kind happens, this is how you have to report it so that somebody else can take action. That's my response to that query.
Okay. Now, Kunal Sham asking, can you please help me understand the role of security services offerings with respect to GDPR?
Right. So as a part of that, as a part of GDPR, we are doing an assessment in terms of how the business is, what are the different geographies. Of course, for GDPR, we're trying to do it from a Europe perspective. What are the different geographies that are there? What is the data that is being held across in those different geographies? And under what circumstances are you transferring data to different outside that particular geography? So if you're holding data in EU, under what scenarios are you transferring it outside of EU? Right? So once you have this kind of data flow analysis done, then you're going back and you're looking at, are you allowed to do this? Are you allowed to bring data outside in the current manner that you're doing it? If yes, then what are the controls that are being suggested by the regulations, and are you following that controls? For example, if you have to give a notification to somebody that collecting data in this manner, this however may be processed under the following ways and may travel outside the geography in the following ways, are you providing those notices? If in certain scenarios that data cannot leave that geography, which now means that if you were processing, let's say earlier in India, you have to shift that processing of data to that particular geography and retain it in that geography. So understand the data, understand that flow of data, build a reasonable logic in terms of where it should actually be transferred, where it should not be transferred, and then define controls around that. Some of those controls may simply have to be processing in those particular geographies. Some may allow you to put in additional controls and transfer it to other geographies. So it's more of an assessment done in that manner. So the services team typically provides consultants that have compliance-related knowledge around GDPR, and they will suggest what is it that you should do. Right?
Okay. The second question you might have already answered, but let me still ask it in any case. Maybe you'd want to add more. From Subodh Kumar as to how to get protected from crown jewels and operational information.
Right. So let me then take that in detail. Right. So when we look at crown jewels and when we talk to different organizations about crown jewels, many times we found that they have an idea which is there in their mind of what their crown jewels are, but that is actually not written down anywhere. So what is crown jewel, let's say, for a business owner is different as what is crown jewel for an operator. It's absolutely different from what is a crown jewel for a CEO. So many a times, given the different roles that we play as per the jobs that we have, our definitions of crown jewels will vary. So when we go and meet those organizations, what is a crown jewel? So it's a question to which everybody has an answer, but many a times is not sure of the answer and has not put in the effort to document it. So around the crown jewel, identify what the crown jewels are, identify where they are kept, identify what is the impact if they were lost, identify what are your existing controls to protect them, identify what more you need to do to protect them. That would be in terms of questions that we can ask ourselves to try and find answers to this. You'll always get a consultant that can help you with this particular process, but definition is definitely where you start, and a lot of people do not have that definition as of today, which makes it very difficult to protect it. So both, if you're satisfied with that, or do put up a follow-up question if you want, if you find that there's more that I need to share. Kunal, same for you or anybody else. If you have a question, please do post. If you believe that my answers are short and there is more information that you would need, definitely willing to put that in more detail.
So while Subodh takes some time in case he wants to post questions, so there is a question from Shrikant, whether there is anything specific towards mobility devices which are connecting over the enterprise wireless LAN.
Sure. So across all devices, I think mobility has brought in its own set of challenges. When we started building wireless LANs in our environment, right, with the network LAN, at least you needed that port to be available, right? You needed to plug in a wire also that. Now, when you went down to the wireless LAN, you are no longer restricted by the physical boundary. It's finally restricted by the wireless power till where the LAN is extended. So when you do that, the first challenge always is to have an understanding of your assets that can connect. With bring your own device, that has also become blurred. In the past, at least organizations were providing them. There was an asset-based, only those assets were allowed to connect, so controls were built around that. With the wireless and the BYOD, the lines became blurred. Build in a list of your assets. There are solutions that you get. These solutions will determine whether you are actually a genuine wireless device that is allowed to connect to the LAN or not. That is step one. Step two, do you have the necessary compliance on that particular device that you're connecting? So for example, if it's a laptop, right, do you have the necessary AV updated? Do you have the necessary Windows patch on that particular laptop? So there's a fixed pattern in terms of checks that will do. Is it a recognized asset? Does it have the necessary compliance? Till you don't have that, it will put you into a different zone and let you update all of that, and then you are allowed to come back to the corporate zones. That is where it understands that, yes, now you have matched the corporate standard and now you can enter the wireless LAN. So you will get solutions of this kind. Of course, other solutions, for example, a wireless IPS is available, other solutions that are in equivalent, but this is definitely a must-have. The next one is about typical MDM solutions where you are recognizing that this asset belongs to the corporate. It builds the necessary encryption channel to connect back, authentication with your Active Directory or an LDAP that you have. So mostly I've seen these two kinds of solutions that are getting close to commoditized, a network access control and a MDM or a mobile device management solution. Right, so these two. Fine, so next one.
The next one is from Partha Saradhi, and he wants to understand how do you achieve complete 100% compliance in an antivirus in an organization.
Right, so I think as you said, and as you asked and as I said, I think 100% antivirus compliance is typically the dream that all organizations have. One of the toughest things to achieve is the 100% antivirus compliance. I think we've, as a part of our services, we have many times gone closer to 98% compliance. The remaining, for example, the users are not connected, right? Or there's no network connectivity at the location that they are there. I think what you should start off with at the bare minimum is reporting on compliance. Let it be weekly or let it be daily. What is my compliance as of today? Understand why some of them are non-compliant. What are the reasons for non-compliant? Some amount of it will have to get adhered to as a part of education as well. For example, somebody is regularly traveling, does not connect to the corporate environment and does not get updated. However, there is a mechanism to update from the internet. Provide that education that when you are traveling, you will see a small icon over here which is suggesting that you are out of date. if you're traveling while on a wireless or the connectivity available at that place, please do ensure that you update it. So have to the regular reporting to understand where you are, analyze what is missing, why it is missing. Some of it will happen via the tools, some of it via education or via something more innovative. For example, allow them to directly update it from the antivirus servers that are provided by the OEMs rather than always doing it via a corporate server. So that's my response to your query. Partha, if you have a follow-up question or need any more details, I'll be happy to discuss. Right.
So Subodh Kumar has asked a follow-up question after your answer that he wants, can you please speak a little bit about DLP and DRM?
Fine. So let's do that. So a data loss prevention solution, they have been around in the industry for quite some time now. And they largely came in because of the fact that we had sensitive and in certain cases financially sensitive and in some cases private sensitive data. For example, it became very common because of credit cards. I am a, let's say, business process outsourcing unit. I have access to your credit cards. What prevents me from sending those credit cards outside? So they initially started with regular expressions. This is a 16-digit number, looks like a credit card. Please monitor or please block transmission. As time went on, they became better at that. So now they can look at documents, they can fingerprint documents, they can look at paragraphs of text. The DLP solution addressed the different channels by which documents or data could go outside your organization. So within the organization, you could be on an endpoint, so you're sending it to the printer, you're downloading it to the USB, you have a chat window on which you are transferring, so some of these mechanisms under which you are doing it. The other channels were, let's say, web. I'm sending it to my Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail accounts. Email, via my corporate email, I'm sending it out. So they had these monitoring/blocking components that would sit on these different channels, and they would look at all the data that is flowing out. Whatever were the rules that were built in, they would apply those rules, and they would either monitor and alert it, or they would block that particular communication. Many of them have a provision of sending a mail to the manager of that person also that your subordinate send this data out, do you believe that this is right? Okay. Now, the second part of this was that DLP was preventing me from sending data outside, right, and across certain channels. I did that. Now, what happens when I want to send it only to a restricted set of users? I have sent it to an authorized user, but they could forward it. So if you see certain organizations which are in the process of external printing, for example, let's say, I have brochures to be printed around a new product. Largely, possibly, let's say, insurance does that. I don't think manufacturing would do that. But many times when they send that data to the printer, it got leaked from the printer. I was sending it to an authorized user. The authorized user could always forward that data from to an unauthorized user. My DLP will say, okay, this person is allowed to send this data to the printer. After all, that's the only way the document can get printed. So my DLP does not block it. It allows the data to go through. So digital rights management solution. So I am suggesting that these are the 5 users. They have the right to open this document. I can also restrict other parameters of the document. For example, can they print the document or not? Can they copy the document or not, or copy parts of the document or not? So I'll put these restrictions into the document as I build the document. I'll send it out. Now, whenever the user opens it, if they have rights to open the document, they will see the document as it is. Any person that is not on that list of DRM users. So it's a simple tool where you can define users. When they open the document, they will not be allowed to open the document. The document refuses to open. Let's say I still have a requirement to send it to a user, but I want to send it for a definite time. I believe that I'm sending it across. The user would do this work in a week. So I set a time boundary as well. That's the next stage of maturity. I sent a document using digital rights management solution with a time boundary. So after that time boundary is over, the authorized user also cannot open it. So this is how a digital rights management document works. Right? Just in case you would still want to discuss some more, I'll be happy to do that. So both, this is the general high-level view of how they work.
Thanks, Harjinder. I think there are some follow-up questions again coming from Subodh and some of the other people. But before I do that, Sagar, could you check if there's anybody from the audio bridge who wants to ask a question?
Certainly, sir. Once again, participants, to ask any questions over the audio, you need to please press 0 and then 1. So no indications on the audio.
No indications. Okay, fine. I'll just continue. So Subodh actually put up a follow-up question that if someone wants to set up DLP and DRM solution, how much does it typically cost?
Right. So this is typically related to number of users. So when you look at a DLP solution, it typically has a user-based licensing as different solutions. So typically on the number of users that you need that will connect via this solution. So it's typically on that. It's also done on the basis of channels. So for example, you can buy only the web module or only the email module or only the endpoint module. So it's typically a combination of the channels that you buy and the number of users. The DRM solution is typically costed using the number of people that will protect documents. Anybody can open the document, so there's no restriction on the opening of the document. It's typically licensed on the number of people that will protect the documents, and then certain connectors. For example, if you have a document management system, and whatever you download to that document management system, whenever anybody downloads it, the DRM policy should automatically apply. So on the basis of certain connectors that you have to specifically develop. So this is how it is. So but we could always connect offline in terms of actual costs or things of that kind. But then this is the typical costing model.
Okay, there's a follow-up question from Partha Saradi that we are facing a few challenges on false positives in antivirus and firewall as well. Can you suggest any strategy to analyze?
So I think that needs more details in terms of the types of false positives. Typically in antivirus, I think you may believe that you may actually, false negative is more serious. False positive is that you found that it is a virus and it did not turn out to be a virus, while it is inefficient. I'm hoping that you are happy with that situation rather than finding that there was a virus which it did not catch. I think it does need that analysis. Different OEMs do have different capabilities I've seen with terms of detection of viruses. So somebody may catch that as a virus while somebody may else leave that as a virus. For the firewalls also, okay, in false positives, if you're saying it is more attack-based, I think that is where I spoke about the IBM QRadar. Let me just spend a minute more. IBM QRadar is an SIM solution. There are other solutions out there in the market as well that work in the SIM space. It collects logs from different solutions. It will collect them from firewall, IPS, let's say the DLP, DRM, AV, and other solutions, and it will build rules across these. So the intention of that is to reduce your false positives. Something may look like an attack on a firewall, but when you look at a combination of different log sources, you may determine that this is not an attack. On the other hand, something may be missed out at the firewall level. By looking at firewall logs, you believe that this is genuine. But when you look at 3-4 different things together, you start seeing a pattern. And you say, no, this is definitely an attack. Because I was looking at individual pieces of data, the parts of the puzzle, I thought that this is not an attack. So it works both ways. Helps you reduce your false positives by bringing in a lot more sources. Helps determine certain attacks because you're looking at a lot more sources rather than parts of the puzzle. Right. That's my take on it. I'll need more details beyond this to be able to answer further. All right.
Are there any questions on the audio bridge, Sagar?
Once again, participants, to ask any questions over the audio, you may please press 0 and 1.
Right, so I think while everybody comes up with questions, let me thank all of you all in advance before the session has ended, just in case I do not get a chance to do that at the end. Thank you so much for the time that you've spent on this session, for the questions that you have. I hope this was helpful to everybody, right? And if there are any more questions, we're still on the chat window or on the bridge to catch them and help respond.
Yeah, I think since there's no question on the audio bridge, there are one or two follow-up questions on the chat, which I'll just go ahead and ask, and probably we could then end it after that. So Shiv Gupta was asking if you could put some highlight on regular checks and balances to be taken care of, and 2, regular activity to be performed to know any such attack to take precautions.
Right. So see, regular checks and balances is more like, what are things that you can do quarterly. What the world does quarterly as of today is generally vulnerability assessment exercises. You're looking at your infrastructure and trying to determine if there were any more threats or anything that you did on this infrastructure and introduce any more vulnerabilities. So that happens for the infrastructure as well as the applications that you have, and you are trying to determine how to harden them. Those are the regular checks and balances that the organizations typically do. Now, across all streams, there will be more checks and balances. For example, if you are in a scenario where you have a lot of contractors and you're giving them access, then are you reviewing their level of access or whether those contractors are still within your organization at that particular incident? So some organizations build a quarterly cycle. They will send a mail to the manager. In this quarter, you have given access or you have requested access for the following people. Are they still required to have access? Right? It is possible that that person moved out and the access was not revoked. So using this particular mechanism, you are at least determining that, okay, this is something that has happened and this is a point in time when you can remove that particular access. Right? Typically, so that is regular checks and balances. Across different areas, you will have to define your own. Digital data loss prevention and let's say the AV kind of question. You will come across false positives in the data loss prevention as well. Every quarter, look at your policies. Are there any new kinds of documents that are getting generated that I need to assess and build rules, right? So similarly, you will do these regular checks and balances across different industries. I think that is why one of the suggestions that we had was for the exercise that we said over here, do an assessment across the entire enterprise and build a roadmap, let's say for 1 year to 3 year period. Look at this and do that, right? So this is one mechanism. Across the board, do a gap assessment, build a roadmap at a point in time for a period of time, right? So you'll have to repeat the second part of the question for me. So this was about the regular checks and balances. It will have to be done across all the different areas.
The second part of the question was also puts a highlight on regular activity to be performed to know any such attack to take precautions.
Right. So see, not because this is an IBM product, but and as I suggest, there are other products in the same space in the market as well. So do not look at this as an IBM product or an IBM strategy. It's an industry-wide strategy across all industries. Security intelligence and security intelligence and events management solution is absolutely good at doing this. Looking at the entire infrastructure, the logs, the kind of data that is flowing, and capturing all of that with sufficient expert from professional experts, building rules around that, it will do this particular activity. Look at all of this, help you with understanding what are the different kinds of attacks, right? And then also the expertise will help you in determining what are possible remediations in that particular area. And you can build your entire security visibility and posture using this, and you can integrate different kinds of security solutions and infrastructure components into this and get a viewpoint around that. So when you say regular, and attacks tend to happen, let's say, every second, every minute, every hour, every day. It is not something that you'll be able to review on a quarterly basis. Infrastructure is what you're reviewing on a quarterly basis as a part of vulnerability assessment, right? So that's my response. If you would want a more detailed response, we could always discuss that.
Yeah, so there are no other further questions on this, but I just wanted some clarity on, I thought maybe I'll ask this and it might be good for the audience also, on this particular slide that you just showed, on the inject unexpected items types of threats. Now, why are they higher than average in case of manufacturing?
So what is happening across different industries is that industries are determining whether they are, what is the amount of investment that they're going to do in information technology, right? What is the kind of size of teams that they will have? What is it that they will achieve in IT security will largely become as a function of that. When you look at this, what it typically is suggesting is that if I put up a web application, and as the previous question was there, I am possibly not assessing it on a regular basis to determine whether it is secure as of today or not. So what does happen as that is that any new kinds of attacks, and they could be very simple as well, they need not be very complicated, is also able to get through. So are we patching whatever is, let's say internet facing or user facing on a regular interval? Are we assessing whether they're still secure, and are we patching them? If we are not doing them, you will find this number to be very high. This is among the most common kinds of attacks. Enough amount of scripts available on the internet by which you can copy and paste and carry this kind of attack. If you're not patching for this, then users will not even, or rather, sorry, attackers will not even try anything complicated. This is the easiest kind. They will go ahead with this. They're successful with this. And then they will go ahead and say, this is good enough for me. Once the organization comes to a high level of maturity, let me try something complicated. So that's the challenge. Not sufficient amount of regular assessments and patching in this particular area.
Thank you. And I think with that, we don't have any more questions. So we will now end today's webinar. Thank you very much to all the delegates and all the attendees for patiently listening in. I hope you found it useful. I could gather you did by the number of questions and types of questions you've asked. I'd like to thank Harjinder for such a nice presentation and for the interactive Q&A. I think most of the attendees have said thank you and that given follow-up questions. In case there are any other follow-up questions, please do write in to us. We'll be happy to get them answered. Thank you very much on behalf of CMR and IBM, and we will share a recording of this with all of you later on, so that those of you who want to revise it, you can go ahead and go through it and ask us any other follow-up questions. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of IBM and CMR, I would like to thank all the participants for joining this webinar. We hope you have spent useful time with us. Thank you now, and you may all disconnect.
What about the feedback?
Participants, you'll be directed to a small feedback at the end of the session. Please submit your responses promptly. Thank you.